And welcome to the Positive Power Hour. I'm your host, Dan McBee. I have two beautiful ladies with me this evening. There's Nicole, my daughter, and Kimberlyn, my granddaughter. How about that, right?
That's right.
And we've got a bunch of surprises tonight. The biggest one of which is the fact that we're not going to have Richard on talking about his baseball journey and his wonderful experiences in Cooperstown and all that went with that. Richard's a little tired from the trip, and I can well imagine that there was just a whole host of things going on during that event. So we will hear from Richard soon, possibly
Hi,
next week.
Melly.
Hi, what do you got? There we go. Hey, there's Melly. There she is. She made it. Are you coming on board today, Melinda? If you look your emails, I sent you a link. You're welcome to join us if you would like to. And if not, we understand. I know you guys have all been through a lot, but we'd sure love to hear about it. And one of the other things we're going to talk about during our journey this evening is the journey of Juneteenth, right? Not tonight, I'm on baby duty. Well, we can appreciate that. Yes, indeed. But you will be here in spirit, we know, and we will continue and get you on another week. All right.
Yeah.
So we were talking about this being Juneteenth, right? And we talked about, and Nick and I talked about it during lunch today. My beautiful daughter and her husband took my wife and I out for Father's Day today. And that's one of the things we do in our family is we celebrate events before and after the event actually happens. It's a lot more
And
fun.
usually with food.
Yes, always with food, right? But it's always more fun to do it before or after the event, not on the day, right? I
Yes.
think it takes a real courageous person to go out on Valentine's Day and go for a dinner or something on Valentine's Day. That's a lot of expense and a lot of hassle trying to get into a restaurant, right?
Courageous or silly?
Uh,
Courageous or silly?
one or the other, yes, or some of all of the above, right? So we were talking about Juneteenth, and it's an interesting thing from my perspective, being older than dirt, and I used having being the fact that I used to babysit Jesus, knows that I came a long time ago, right? But the whole race relations issue and all of the things that have been going on in our country for God knows how long. Um, being an old white person, I can tell you that from what I grew up in, it we didn't even really know what Black people wanted to be called because I guess we didn't care enough to ask, right? But I enjoyed very much studying US history, and especially the formulation of unions and the freeing of slaves. And it's interesting to me. We call our show the Positive Power Hour, and it's all about the empowerment of who, Nicole?
Ourselves.
Ourselves. Exactly right. And so, in many ways, the emancipation is not just of Black people, but every person, right? Because we all grow up with this idea that we are less than, or at least most of us do. There may be a small percentage of people who got it of who they really are and went full steam ahead to create whatever it was they wanted to create in their life, right? But the vast majority, what's that phrase I use all the time? The huddled masses live in quiet desperation. Now, please know that I am not in any way wanting to diminish the plight of the Black in society, especially in the United States, but also in South Africa. And we'll go into a story on that a little later in the show as well. But in studying about Lincoln and freeing the slaves and the Confederate, the Civil War and all of the things that have gone on in our history, I was fascinated by understanding that when Lincoln freed the slaves, when the Emancipation Proclamation became law, there were many ramifications of that most people didn't realize. Just like anytime you pass a new law, there's a ripple effect, right? There's one little thing changes 14 other things, right? And some of the amazing things they discovered through the years after the Emancipation Proclamation was that there were, first of all, most Blacks in that day didn't know what freedom was or what they were supposed to do. And many were kicked out of the what's the word I'm looking for? Mansion, the situation they were in. They were literally kicked off to the street and say, "Here, you're free. We can't keep you anymore. Goodbye." Right?
Well, let's start, Pop, with what exactly is Juneteenth about, right?
Good. Let's do that.
Somebody doesn't know,
Good.
what exactly does it entail? And we did some research, and last week or this week I said, I don't know a lot about it, so maybe we should research before we're having our show on that day. So you want to start and I'll...
No, I think you ought to jump in. I think you're doing great.
So the research that I found, and I just screenshotted a little snippet. Oh, now the dates aren't on there. Shoot. But, okay, so from what I found was that, let me see. So in January, I forget the year, and I screenshot it, but I can't find it now. But in January, they actually passed a law that the slavery was done. No more. You can't, to end slavery in January.
Yeah.
Well, 2.5 years later, on June 19th, they actually went and told everybody because nobody knew, right? I mean, how were they passing the information along? Probably from newspapers that white people saw, right? And they weren't telling everybody, unfortunately, right? Or the people that owned these slaves, which, But so Juneteenth became that because that was when it became public knowledge that everybody was made aware of slaves being free. So I think it's kind of interesting. The article that I did screenshot was really interesting. This was from President Ronald Reagan. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Or one day we will spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it was like in the United States where men were free. And it goes on to talk about, we just don't know what kind of freedoms that we have if we don't know, if we don't understand the laws, if we don't understand what's been implemented, if we don't research as far as, what governing body covers what, then we don't understand what freedoms lie ahead for us, and that made my eyes really open up, so we don't understand what we need to fight for. We don't understand what's going to be taken away if we don't understand what's out there, right?
Right.
So I think that's what President Ronald Reagan was saying was like, we need to know what to fight for and what to protect. And that way we can hand it on to our children and our grandchildren, like my coconut and my AJ, right? So that they have a better life too. Yep,
that's absolutely true. And we're going to go back to a point you made in a few minutes. You talked about if we don't know what freedom is, how do we know what to fight for, right?
Right.
If we don't know who we are, how do we know what we can do, right? And so freedom is kind of like success. What's your definition of success? What's your definition of freedom? Right? We got a lot of people saying, we want our freedom. Well, if your freedom infringes on other people's freedom, is that freedom? Question, right? And here's Melinda saying the Black community has come a long way, but still have a long way to go. Knowledge is power, and we can help our Black communities by standing together. Absolutely true. What a wise young lady, right? Absolutely true. And it goes even deeper than that, doesn't it? That's the thing about it. There is no simple problem and there is no simple solution, right? It's like everything is part of the other, and how, and that ripple effect we're talking about, right?
Very complex, yes.
Yes, absolutely. It's like what I was starting to say about back in the days of slavery. There were, and Nikki and I were talking about this at lunch, and it's like, gosh, I have to be so careful of how I phrase things because I don't want to come off, badly. I don't know exactly what, but there were people who were slave owners who, no, in no way is slavery a good thing. Please, no, I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Nobody should be enslaved by another human being. But there were some slave owners who were more humane and more kind and more generous and caring than others. Kind of like our society, right? There are kind people, there are people that want to help people grow, and there are those that are threatened by anybody who tries to raise themselves up, right? And so how much have we really changed through all of these years, right? So back in those days, those same people got thrown out on the street, the same as the ones that were enslaved by cruel, harsh people. And so they had to learn how to make their way in the world after spending perhaps generations being uneducated purposely by many slave owners, beaten by many slave owners, being told that they are good for nothing but picking cotton or whatever the crop of the year was, right? Or for women to bear children to give them more workers in the field, literally held down in every way you could possibly imagine. And then be told, okay, go out, make your life now. We're done with you. We can't keep you anymore. Goodbye. Just imagine what a culture shock that must have been. And they are still to this day, and that's kind of like what Melinda's saying here, is that they've come a long way, but they still have a long way to go because they weren't given the same benefits and opportunities that many people, especially in our white world, have had for an awful long time, right? So they've had to make up ground in an amazingly short period of time when you consider the overall scheme of things, right? And I know I've mentioned this in one of our other broadcasts, but there was a baseball general manager of the Dodgers who one night was being interviewed on a radio program, or maybe it was TV, but I think it was radio. And apparently it had a couple of drinks before they went on air, and they were talking about race relations. And he started talking about why baseball players were behind other athletes, and especially when it comes to things like general managers and team managers and things like that, why it was that we didn't have more blacks in those positions. And he said, well, you have to understand the history, right? The black athlete was raised to have strong legs and big hips and were big boned and big featured, right? And they were raised that way. They were bred that way, if you will, just as black women of the day were raised to create a body that was good for bearing children, right? Now that sounds horrible, right? It sounds racist as hell. But he was just talking about the history that people went through and how they were having to build from that point to where they've gotten to now. And he wasn't trying to downgrade them in any way whatsoever. In fact, most Dodger players of the day were interviewed afterwards and saying, guys, you got it all wrong. This is not a racist man. He cares a great deal about all people, right? But he lost his job and was exiled out of the community for those comments. And really what he was speaking about was the truth. It's like for the longest time we had black quarterbacks or black line players and running backs and things like that, but not quarterbacks because they were viewed as being not intelligent enough to manage a football team, right? To manage how the game was played. Well, that again had to come, like Melinda said here. They had knowledge is power, and they had to gain that knowledge. They had to learn to work with their minds to create the kind of things they wanted to create, which is true for every single one of us, right? Again, not to belittle Juneteenth. Yeah, I am totally in support of it. And it just points out that it's true for every single one of us as far as taking self-responsibility to create and to build ourselves into the kinds of people that we want to be. And if you're not 100% happy with where you are today, congratulations, none of us are. But what are you striving for? What are the changes or the improvements you want to make in yourself that will make you happier and create the kind of life that you choose to have, right? So that to me, yeah, go ahead.
What I had in mind, since I see my beautiful daughter there, is just to hear a little bit about her. What do you think?
What do you want to know?
Oh. Well, Kimberlyn has always been I always explain her as like, she's her own person, right? She's not really a follower, and she's not really a leader. She's just her own person. She beats to her own drum. Sometimes, it is what it is, right? She's really had a sense of
roll, right?
Yeah, she's really had a sense of self for a long time that, if she didn't want to do something, I explained, like, when she was a kid, it'd be like 7:00, and this is a young kid, right? It'd be like 7:00 and I'm looking around, where's Kimmy? Where is she? She was already in bed, like, didn't say a word to anybody. Like, she wanted to go to bed, so she went to bed. What kind of kid does that? That's like, what? But she also went missing when we went shopping half the time. And we'd call her Waldo. Where's Waldo? Sorry, Kim.
That's right. Yeah.
I know. Spill it all, Mom.
And I just wanted to share a little bit. When my son was moving, she was the one, they all were, we all were just very encouraging to him, but she was the one, that sounded a lot like you, Pop, which was, don't focus on all that. You're going to have, you're having a great opportunity to make a different life, and very positive. And, we all were doing that. But I just thought, oh, there's Dad. There he is right there. So, Kimmy, would you agree with me of my example of who I think you are?
Every single word. I was lucky enough to grow up having Papa in my life, and he's been the same pretty much throughout my whole life, and that's really instilled in me, like, with everything, my mindset, how I go about things. And I'd rather look at things in the positive way than always look at it negative. There's always going to be negatives around your life, and
yes,
it just depends on how you want to move forward.
Can I ask a question about that? And I think the world of your family as well, okay? But we all know that many of us grow up in a rather negative environment, right? And there are people that just don't see the light. They just see the dark, right? And I know how hard it is to shift from the drama, chaos, negative kind of environment that many of us grew up in or experienced. And then to shift away from that, sometimes it's out of necessity because you look at it and you go, I just don't want that. That's not for me, right? But even then, it can be really hard to shift, right? Because you're so used to the other. How was that for you? Did you find it to be a transition to go through, or was it, this is what fits for me and I'm just living in that and that's it?
I've always looked at it as in the moment, you know, like things were negative always in the moment growing up, but especially in high school. And I mean, that's a lot because it's teenagers, you know, we have a lot of hormones and everything,
Yes.
but I always looked at it in the moment. Okay, this is not permanent. You know, this is never going to be permanent for me. I knew that from the very beginning. It was just temporary, you know, and I can either live always in a bad mood or I can just stay positive and be happy. You know, that was my ultimate goal for me every single day is try to be as happy as you can be today.
Yeah.
And tomorrow we'll see what comes.
It isn't here yet, right?
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I try to live by today.
Well, and I can remember talks with you when we would get together and you having a clear idea of what you wanted to do and where you wanted to go and how you were going to get there, right? And of course, we all had those ideas, but most of us don't go through with them
Yeah.
or they change, right? But you always had this determination that you were going to live your life differently.
Mhm.
That was the strongest message that I think you put out all the time was that you knew, or at least you thought you knew, what you were going to accomplish and the things you were going to do and the things you weren't going to do, right?
Oh, yeah.
Half of which, of course, you did, but that's the what we all do. But, you know, having that strong will and that strong determination that you were going to get somewhere with your life, right, is really powerful and really important. And that's why we're talking about it right now, because really, Juneteenth really is about empowerment, right? And you know, we can focus on slavery, but the reality is we've all been slaves to some thought processes within ourselves that keep us imprisoned, right? And that's what the Power Hour is all about, is helping people to remember who they really are instead of who they've falsely come to believe they are, right? We are all so much more than what we've given ourselves permission to be. Melly sent another message here. Black slaves were denied books because the whites knew they would educate themselves. They were denied sports because blacks were bred to be laborers in the field. Very much what I talked about, right? They knew blacks would take over and dominate as they were strong. Very powerful statement. And by the way, for those of you watching on the recordings, I hope this is enjoyable for you. And I hope it makes you pay attention a little bit to how you treat your fellow citizens in this world. And even more important than that is to pay attention how you treat yourself. Because how you treat yourself is going to reflect how you treat others, right?
Yes.
If you're harshly critical of yourself, you're going to be harshly critical of others. If you judge yourself as being bad and wrong and stupid and all of those things, that's the energy you're going to put on other people, right? So, Melinda, thank you so much for sharing that. You're absolutely right. I agree completely with that. And I'm assuming you learned some things in school as well. How about that, right? And you have a family that helps you to understand this in ways that we cannot, right? I could never, ever assume that I know what Black people go through because I have no clue. What's that saying that I remember mentioning to Luke one day about a young man that had been stopped by police, and they call that driving while black, right? DLB instead of DWB, driving while black. And that people, you know, how many times they get pulled over just because they're black. There really was no other reason. And so we all have a long way to go, right? Our police departments, our social workers, everybody. There's nobody excluded, right? All of us have a lot of work to do. And you see it in society today, and it's always been like this, let's face it, but it just seems more prominent now. And I think social media and television and all radios and all of these things. There's more communication available out there than ever, right? But we find it so much easier to cast the problem or the blame on you, right? You're the problem, rather than, no, I'm the problem. So that's really what it's all about, is taking self-responsibility. It's not the Republicans, it's not the Democrats, it's being human, right? And we have another comment from Missy here. Being married to a Black man and having mixed children, I want to learn their history so I can help enhance their life and learn where I can be of service. Yeah. You know, I am just so proud of this family. I really and truly am. Every single one of you are just amazing. And I am honored to be a part of this family. I really and truly am. It's giving me shivers while I'm even saying it. You know, you guys have grown up in such amazing ways. And you all deserve the credit for that, right? Yeah, you did it. You did it and you're doing it. And I know for a fact that every single one of you are making a major impact on this world. Imagine as we continue this, and I've got a lot of things going on right now that are going to help make this grow much faster and much easier. But it's a movement, as far as I'm concerned, of getting people to realize who they really are and how to get out of that being in the huddled masses, living in quiet desperation, and being able to live in the spirit, right? The sunlight of the spirit. So, Kimmy, we keep pulling away from you, but in your 65 years now on Earth,
You're old, Kimmy.
I guess so.
can you think, what is the first thought that comes to your mind if I ask you, what's the biggest lesson you've gotten from life so far?
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
The biggest lesson from life that I've learned is that you're going to take hits. And I've always had it in my head. It's just how you go forward. That's my life lesson to everyone. That whoever comes to me and says, hey, I need a little help or something, take the hit and move forward.
Yeah.
You know, because there's no moving forward without the hit.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this at lunch as well, Kimmy, about how there's the kind of like the chicken or the egg situation. If we're all born perfect as God's children, then we can't make mistakes. Or can we? Or is the imperfection that we see ourselves as the perfection?
That's a twister.
Isn't it?
Well, I mean, mom's perfect, so I mean, there's.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That's what he said.
But the thing is, if God made everything, and I believe he did, right? And if we were made in his likeness, then we all have God in us, right? That's that spark, that energy that is God, right? But in the grand design of life, if we never got angry, if we never experienced fear, if we never had a negative thought or feeling, what would we have? You know, it's like you were talking about the greatest lesson you got from life so far being that you're going to take hits, right? Well, if you never took a hit, how would you know how to defend against a hit? How would you know how to recover from a hit, right? So it's like if you played baseball and you never struck out, first of all, wouldn't the game get boring pretty quick, right?
I don't know. That would be exhilarating, right? Like every time you got up,
for a while, right? But after
Yeah.
a while, it would lose that excitement because I got another hit, I got another hit. When am I
Everybody,
going to not get a hit, for God's sakes, right?
everybody would be walking them.
Yeah, right? So it's those negative times in life that help us to grow, right? I think I've used the analogy about the chicken, the egg, right? And the bird is getting ready to hatch. And in captivity, the well-meaning human will help chip away the egg crust so that the bird can get out, right? Not realizing that it's that fight to break away from the shell that gave the bird the strength in the wings to be able to fly. So it's the same thing for us. The hardships that we go through feel awful when we're going through them. But a little while later, we get to look back on it and go, God, if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened and that wouldn't have happened. And I wouldn't have gotten this experience. And it's that way with everything. It's like my signature on my email. It says, what you think is happening to you is actually happening for you, right? And it's so true. The worst thing that ever happened to me, as far as I was concerned back in the day, was when your grandmother, your mother, wisely kicked me to the curb, right? That was the smartest thing she had done for herself and her family at that point, because I was a frickin' train wreck. And if she hadn't done that, she would have been just like the caring human trying to help the bird get out and fly. I just stayed a mess. So shortly after we divorced, I took her to lunch one day and thanked her for leaving me. And at first she thought I was being a lower posterior person, right? and then she looked at me and she goes, "You're serious, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, absolutely. I realize that, there are some qualities I have that are awfully hard to walk away from." I knew that much about myself, at least. Not much more than that, but I knew that much. So I knew it wasn't easy for her to do. And she did it. And I thanked her for it, right? So that was a time when, recognizing that something bad happened to me, and I thought it was the worst thing in the world. I felt my heart was ripped out. I was losing my family that I loved with all my heart. And how could you do that to me, right? And then not that long afterwards, I got to realize that there was a lot of good that happened because of it. And so just like you were saying, you choose to hold on to the positive, right? Same here. I chose to be the kind of man that I should have been for her. Because at some point you got to do it for yourself, right? All right. So Melly says here, I believe God gave us free will so that we can seek him always. Yes, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. Although in my spiritual path, it would say that you don't have as much free will as to even decide what chair you're going to sit in. That everything's
already decided.
Yeah. Which is still kind of twists my head from time to time, right? Really? You mean everything, even the chair I sit in, is already determined? Well, and to me, the whole idea about that is not to try to figure everything out. Quit thinking so much. Everything's going to work out, right? So your biggest lesson was to take, you're going to get hits and just get through it anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the question. What was your biggest hit?
Ooh.
I told you mine.
Honestly, it was probably making the decision to step away from my current living situation to better my living situation. So stepping away from my dad and my siblings and going to a new environment to be able to better myself.
Yeah. And did that feel comfortable right away, or did you kind of have to go through a little bit of self-beating and self-doubt and all that, or did you know?
Oh, there was a bunch of emotions with it. there was a bunch of emotions that came with it for a little while.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had to be able to grow for myself.
I don't know if I should post this one. Can you see this? The one from Melinda?
Yeah.
Did I post? Oops, I posted it. Oops, let me pick it up. Sorry. Well, let's just say you recognized that you needed to make changes to have the kind of life you wanted, right? And I say all the time that we can all be wonderful role models or horrible examples, right? And we can say, okay, good, that's good, Melinda. He's gotten better. I'll give him that. Okay, and Kimmy's shaking her head in agreement. All right. We don't know what other people go through in their lives, right? And even though you might have known his background somewhat, you don't know the whole story. You can't,
Exactly.
right? And so it's easy for us to look at it and go, well, he was toxic. Well, okay, but I think he did the best he could do with what he had, right? And not knowing what his whole situation is, it, at the very least, makes me compassionate, right? Because he hasn't been able to allow himself the joy that he could have in life. Once again, the huddled masses live in quiet desperation, right? And so when we can either look at people that have gone through really hard times and live their life in a way that perhaps you wouldn't want to live in today, and that's okay, right? But we can have empathy for that person.
Yeah, I think as adults we can, we can make those better, overviewed opinions of like, oh, it must have been a history there. Yeah. And I think it was a little harder when they were, younger.
Yes.
So, you know.
Absolutely. And one of my great graces was being involved with
tiptoeing.
Yes. But one of my great graces was being able to be there for all of you guys, as little as I was, right? But a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. It was awesome for me to be involved in what I would consider the most important learning years of your life, right? When you're transitioning from little girl to a young woman, right? And that's a rough time anyway. I mean, my God. Much harder to be a young woman in society than a young man.
And I didn't make it much easier, did I?
Well, we all had our roles, right?
But that's also why I said, like, I was grateful enough to have you in my life, because every decision I made, you were kind of like in the back of my mind, like, make it positive, make it better, like it was something that helped me through.
Well, if that helped you, I'm really, really grateful. And I'm really honored that perhaps I had a little bit to do with it, right? Very little, I know, but maybe even a little. Great. Yeah, very, very little, right?
Look at what Melly said.
Huh?
Look what Melly put in there.
It's our job to break generational curses. Yeah. And as you said earlier, Melly, it comes with being educated and, being able to take responsibility for ourselves, right? Happiness, and we say this, I think, on every broadcast, Nicole, if I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure we say almost every time that happiness is a choice.
Yes.
It's just that most of us don't understand that, right? And we don't want to take a responsibility for that choice. We want to blame everybody for our unhappiness. I'd be absolutely happy if Melinda would just do this. I'd be totally, joyous if my wife would just do that, right? And no. It happened for me, right? Because these are two young ladies right here who are a great example of being involved in a positive environment as much as we could make for them, right? And that positivity has influenced their lives. So one, laugh out loud. Joke's on you, Papa. I don't
listen. But you said there's two women, but there's really four that I've seen so far.
Well, absolutely. I'm talking about the two on stage here, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And again, it's humbling for me, okay? And it's honoring what I believe so much in, is that we are either wonderful role models or horrible examples, right? Either way, we're making a difference. What kind of difference do you want to make, right? And we all have to take that responsibility. I have so many times gotten comments about how my positive attitude that somebody experienced, whether it was in the store or walking down the street or whatever, changed a person's day. How amazing is that? How powerful is that? How humbling is that? It's kind of hard to have a huge ego when your work creates such grace, and it's not you, right? It's not me. It's that spirit that we talk about, right? It's that knowing that even though that person might be Chinese, or he might be black, or he might be, God forbid, Irish. I mean, oh my God, the Irish, right?
The Irish.
I'm Irish, by the way. In case you didn't know. Yeah, you too. That's right. Yes, you too. Yes, a little bit. But, no matter what race or creed or religion or whatever walk of life, whether they're gay or straight or whatever, I don't care. We're all children of God. And if we can just bring our egos down enough to recognize that, how different would our world be today? It's our egos that make us better than that black person down the road, right? Or that makes us think that the gay person shouldn't have any medication to help them feel more comfortable in their body, because that's God's, they're a sin against God. Well, God made them. So how can that be a sin? I don't get it. I don't care what people do. Everybody deserves to have love.
Yes.
And whatever makes your life feel fulfilled, whoever that person is, that is between you and that person and God. You know what? God. What's that saying that I've read in the Bible? I'm pretty sure I've seen it a few times. God is love. Right? God is love. So I'm just reading Melinda's comment of there again about laughs, jokes on you. I don't listen. So Juneteenth, I'm glad. And actually, it's only been a law for 2 years now, a holiday for 2 years.
Yeah.
Right? How slow are we that it took us all this time to recognize the horribleness of slavery, right? And just like we were talking about not blaming somebody that might be in our life who may have grown up in a really difficult time or situation, if we don't judge them, then we help to free them, don't we? Right? If we don't judge ourselves, we're more capable of helping somebody else. I didn't do much to help either of you or any of you, but I did what I do, right? And each of you have said, and again, I'm humbled by it, that it made a difference. And I'm glad, because this is how we expand that thing. That's how the positive power hour will grow, long after I'm gone, right? You guys will still be doing this thing, I bet. And that's the whole idea, is to help other people recognize that those moments of huddled masses living in quiet desperation, of those times where maybe somebody is so upset that they think about ending their life, right? I mean, suicide is at an all-time high, right?
Mhm.
And maybe, just maybe, somebody is watching this show tonight on record, and they hear something that Melinda says. They hear something that Nicole says. They hear something that Kimberlyn says. That I'll get it. Cheryl said, right? And that might be that one thing they needed to go, wait a minute, where am I going? What am I thinking? There is a lot of hope, but you have to have the right support. And that's one of the things we've got right here tonight, right? Is a lot of positive support, a lot of people here willing to say, you matter. So if you're struggling tonight, those of you watching live or watching on recording, if you're watching tonight and you're not feeling like, the most positive person on the planet, if you've been kind of beating yourself up, if you've been having that quiet desperation we talk about every week, give us a call. Let me give you the number again. Where are they here? Here we go. You can call me anytime. There's my phone number. You can put pause on the recording and write that number down. Give me a call. I care. I'll be there for you. If you want to email, there's my email address, right? And the Mind Whispering channel that I haven't done much with. Well, there's the YouTube, but here's the Facebook, the Mind Whispering group. You can join there too. We're getting ready, as I've mentioned a few times, we're getting ready to launch a whole bunch of social media work that'll really help everybody, I hope and pray. It's my goal, right? Is to help more people. And so if you are feeling less than, or if you just want another shot of positivity, if you want to be reminded of who you really are instead of who you've allowed yourself to think you are, I can promise you, I know you better than you do right now. I promise you. Nicole's seen me work. She knows how it goes, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And so,
Yep. And you matter. And if you don't know it, you matter.
absolutely.
Yes.
And you
We're all
don't know what
children of
that
God.
next second's going to bring, right?
Right.
The
We
moment is just
expect
a
them.
moment.
Be excited for the blessings. Be excited for your journey. You know.
Imagine that you take that last desperate act and you end your life, and the doorbell rings, and it's the guy from a magazine. What's that magazine thing?
Oh gosh, that
Right?
sweepstakes.
Sweepstakes. Yeah, the magazine sweepstakes, and you've just won $1 million.
With that big check, remember?
Yeah, right. So that's the whole idea. And Kimmy mentioned it, that you're going to get your hits, right? But you stay in the moment. And that was one of the things you mentioned, Kimmy, that I think is
Publishers
so
Clearinghouse.
powerful.
There it is.
Do your very best to stay in the moment, right?
The moment is just a moment.
It's just a moment. An experience is just an experience. This too is going to change. There's going to be a new experience in just a second, right? So the present, as I'm sure you can remember me saying, Kimmy, and if you don't remember it, I'll say it again. The present is the gift from God. It's where all the magic happens, when we're in the moment, right? I mean, I started out the day thinking we were going to have Richard on our call, and he was going to, talk about the wonderful journey he was on, and the home runs he hit, and just all the things.
Don't tell his story.
but it changed, and instead I get to be with two beautiful ladies on the show here tonight, right? How awesome! So if I was all bummed out because Richard decided he was too tired to come on the show, we wouldn't have had the great guests we've got tonight, right? I'd be sitting, sucking my thumb on the couch. So one more little banner for us to remember is that be still and know that I am God. If I am still, it means my mind is quiet. I'm in the moment, right? So it's interesting to me that, all of the sayings that we've heard through our lifetimes, right? Be still and know that I am God, right? A saying, it's better to give than to receive. And, and people say, what are you talking about? I'd much rather receive than give. Are you kidding me? Right? But you can't outgive God. And the more you give, I love to give. It's my favorite thing, and it's not money necessarily. If I have it, I'm happy to share it. But it's more about giving to an individual to brighten their day, to make them smile. I mean, my wife was in the shower and I walked in and I made a comment and she laughed, and I said, I just love the fact that after 30 plus years, I still make you laugh. What a wonderful gift that is, right? To bring joy to another human being. And if that's all that you can muster for the day is to get somebody else to smile, to feel a little bit better than they did before you walked in, you've had a great day, right? And I get to have great days every single day. Do I have bad moments? You bet I do. I'm not perfect.
What?
And yeah, right? Things happen. But as Kimmy said, you're going to take hits. Get over it. Move forward.
My friend always says, fall down 7 times, stand up 8.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kate and I were talking about that last night about, I make every single whisper that you've seen, that beautiful one that Kimmy's got on there right now. So nice and shiny and pretty. And her mom's got the same color. And
wait a minute.
Hey, she's got the purple one there too. I love the purple. Yeah.
I was looking for it.
I hand make every single one of those, right? And I had to learn how to paint and how to fix the flaws in the parts and do all of that stuff. And they've come a long way from the days when I first started with this, right? And I still find things that I don't like with them, right? That I'm perfect, right? But I've come a long way with it. And that is a tribute to tenacity, that I don't give up. I always want things better. It doesn't mean that I live in frustration that I haven't made them perfect, but I'll look at it and go, I can make that better. And then I
They're
strive.
never going to be perfect, Papa. Makes it perfect.
What was that?
They're never going to be perfect.
Well, as close as I can get them, right? But if I look at it and I see a little dink in it,
that's what makes it even better.
Well, okay, then I'm going to leave them just like they are then. So let's resolve on this Juneteenth that we are all going to strive to eliminate the slavery that we all live under. There's an old Eagles. Is it an Eagles song? Yeah, it's an Eagle. Is it Eagles? Yeah, an old Eagles song that says, "So oftentimes it happens that we live our lives in chains, and we don't even know we have the key." What a beautiful line that is, right? And that goes right again back to living like a slave. That we put ourselves in a cell and the door's not even locked, but we stay in that cell. You see it in the way people train dogs, right? They'll train them that they're not allowed to leave a certain square. And if they've trained them to not leave that square, they won't, because they don't know what's on the other side of it, right? Mm-hmm. Let's be smarter than that.
I don't want nobody to train them like that.
That's right. I don't
Please
either.
don't.
Yes, Luke, you're right. It's the Publishers Clearinghouse. Yay! Is that Richard? Or is that
No,
Luke?
that's Luke.
That's Luke. All right. I wasn't sure. Yeah, and there's Cheryl.
Cheryl
saying,
got it
"Hey,
too.
Publishers Clearinghouse.
Who's
And
the
look at
old
this
one
one.
now?
This is a PG video.
Yeah, because I was pulling these out.
Oh, I got you. And then that's why your dog's got complaints. Oh, man. All right.
I feel a little bruised today.
Do you?
That's all right. I took a hit and I'm all right.
There you go. There you go. Right. So, girls, I have a question for both of you. The peanut gallery. If you see somebody out and about today on your travels, if you see somebody without a smile, what should you do?
Give them one of yours.
Why on earth would you do that?
Because they're free.
And
And it makes you feel good and it makes them feel good.
absolutely. So let's make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face. All right. And no matter what you're going through, remember, this too will pass, no matter what it is. Some days it may feel like it's passing like a gallstone, right? But it's going to pass. Whatever it is, you know, the good times never last and neither do the bad, right? But the smile can go on forever, right? So Melinda says, and I'm frugal, laugh out loud. What does that mean? Does anyone know? Yeah, she'll tell us, I'm sure. So for
She doesn't want to give her smile.
oh, I got you. Okay. Yes, well, we could go into stories on that, right? Anyway, I want to thank my co-hosts for being on the show tonight, and I want to thank Melinda for sharing so much about the Black struggle and the things she learns both from school and from family, right? People that know much better than we do what that struggle has been like, and hopefully as each year goes by, we get it better and better, right? And we're all going to keep practicing. Not only for the smile is free. Yes, that's right. Keep practicing to help our fellow citizens, but even more importantly, to help ourselves. Because it's like they say when you go on an airplane, put the oxygen mask on yourself first, because you can't help those around you if you can't breathe.
That's right.
Right? So it's that way with life too. You can go out and try to help everybody else, but if you're struggling and you come home and you're depressed, you haven't helped anybody.
That's right.
And it's so much easier to lift somebody up than to try to push them up, right? All right. So the Power Hour is about to come to a close. I wish you all a very liberating Juneteenth. And let's make every day Juneteenth and remember to free ourselves as we help free others. All right. Thank you all for being on the show tonight. We love you. Yep, I'll do that too. I'll get it there somewhere. Anyway, here's my heart. Here's my heart right here. All right. There we go. There it is.
Is it black? Oh.
Oh, mine's red too. Red, I've got it. All right, folks. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next week right here on the Positive Power Hour. Good night, everybody.
So
See
bad.
you later.
Bye.